are live.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Vancity Beats, Eats, and More. I'm joined today by Tien Neo Eamas, also known as Tien the Wizard, and we are here in his studio at the Beaumont Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. For those of you who are joining us, we are in the second season of Vancity Beats, Eats, and More, which is funded by TELUS STORYHIVE. So shout outs to TELUS for extending this crucial show where we highlight and showcase the underground creative community of Vancity. That includes people who are musicians, DJs involved in the music scene, people who are artists, visual artists, and other makers and crafts people, as well as people who are just generally putting their energy into creating a bustling creative community for all of us to participate and enjoy. So we are here in what we like to call Vancity, also known as the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So today we have Tien the Wizard joining us. I have been very lucky to be involved in the Beaumont Studios, and Tien is the longest current standing tenant of the Beaumont. The Beaumont was created in 2004. This building that we're in is the original Beaumont building, and Tien's studio is in this original building upstairs through the maze, and then in a corner where Tien uses his space perfectly to do what they do, which is create jewelry as a master silversmith and goldsmith, also create spells as an alchemist, creates soap, and also has a certification as a Feng Shui consultant. Tien is a wizard, and I've been introduced to some wizardry. However, I'm really excited to dive deeper into Tien's world of wizardry and magic.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So we're going to get to know Tien, about Tien's life journey, about what Tien creates here, and where Tien invests their energy. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Tien, for being with us. Thank you for sharing your time so that we can get to know you better.
You're
and,
welcome.
and
My
share
pleasure.
your story.
My pleasure.
So I'd like to begin by asking you, where did you grow up?
Well, do we need to... There's a lot of noise out there. Okay, fine. Because the microwave is going to go on now. Yeah, we're shooting. Yeah. A real life studio in action.
Yes.
I am not working in isolation. At the Beaumont Studios, in this building, we have about 20 different people, and I am right conveniently placed right next to the microwave. So, it's a very popular. People don't come to see me, they just come to heat up their food. So I have your question once again.
I was asking you, where did you grow up?
Yes, I'm Singapore born and bred.
And what was your upbringing like in Singapore?
I was born in, even if I look very lovely and youthful, I am a Gen Xer, and I was born in 1968, Singapore. At that point, Singapore was a, thirdish world, for lack of a more contemporary word, fast becoming super city. So Singapore then was absolutely not the Crazy Rich Asians movie version. So it was, and I feel so blessed that was the country I was born in, because you had the guy selling satays and cold bricks on a bicycle coming around. You had like chickens running around and animals being slaughtered right there, and that's the real, it's a very authentic country. Before every country in the world gets modernized, you get a good flavor of that country. So I'm so blessed that I was there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, before they were colonized and then changed the way of living, or the way of living for the people.
Yeah, honestly, sure. we can talk about colonization, but it's also modernization.
Yeah.
Right? That's two different things, and in a very overly sensitive woke culture around race and colonization, we got to be clear that we're not always blaming the colonizers for the loss of cultural identity. And we ourselves in our homeland will be quick to chuck it for the sake of modernization. So, I always like to bring in that as an immigrant, I'm very aware of how the conversation goes in this country, in Canada, and it's just too simplified, and we have to be responsible about how we speak about it. Mm-hmm. So in the world of modernization, which is what every culture loves to modernize, whether it was influenced by European colonizers or just simply because, we all wanted to have more things and we wanted things to be faster. That's modernization.
Yes.
Singapore, the city the way it is now, is not the city I know anymore. And I was born into a mixed race, mixed class, fundamentalist Christian family. And I am part Chinese and part Indonesian. So Indonesians would be pretty much your indigenous people, whether it be people from Borneo, Singapore, Indonesia, Java, Malaysia, even the Philippines. We're all island blood and we're all sama-sama. So we're all the same. So we know each other well. When we see each other, we're like, okay, I see you, because we're the same Southeast Asian Straits people. And of course, we've, traveled to each other's lands for centuries prior to other people coming to visit us and take over us. So that's my background. And my fundamentalist Christian family was interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't like to demean them in any way. I really respect where they're at, and they are what they do, and that's just the way it is. But I'm now in Canada, and I came here about 33 years ago.
And what was your reason for moving to Canada?
My reason was to run away. And I was given the opportunity, and I felt fortunate because by the time I was 18, my family had moved in their class status and were now kind of more middle class. So I wasn't very book smart. I am a neuroatypical thinker, so I'm not a cognitively educated person. I'm educated enough, yes, but I don't read very well. Hence, being a teacher and being an artist is really suited for me as an expression and a performer and all that stuff, right? So because of that, I didn't do very well in school, so I actually failed the first year of junior college, and my mom, the wealthy Chinese lady with a lot of pride, really, really hated that, and so I was either to stay back home and repeat first year, which was really loss of face for her, or, she was going to happily send me off and send me to Canada, because it's so much better to be sent over to a Western country, right? All Asians will understand that, if you're not doing very well at home. So I luckily was sent over here, and in the world of magic and spirituality, it really was my dream that did come true, because I asked whoever, the creator, for years for me to be released of my family, because it was not a good upbringing for me. So I wanted to leave, and here it was, right there. And I was like, all right, see ya, bye. They didn't know that, of course. But that was my plan.
What were some of the strains that you felt in that family dynamic?
I am trans.
Yes.
And my family raised me as a girl. So I was given the gender marker girl when I was born, and I was never really identified with that at all. I just am. And in fact, I knew since I was 5, I said, what is wrong with this planet? Why is it there are only 2 kinds of people? Why is it you're supposed to be one or another? Why is it, I don't care, I just want to be happy. And that is now, 50 years later, I'm clear, like that is really my sole passion, is to really, sole purpose is to really transform the culture on this planet around the gender binary and all of that, and to just like transform gender, because that is so old paradigm. We're not actually free to be the brilliant souls that we are as long as we continue thinking we are a gender. So I knew that at 5 years old, and so that was a beautiful, in the rich landscape of life that throws you curveballs and treats you treats you poorly, and oppression happens, and there's violence and there's abuse and all of that. For me as a spiritual teacher, I needed to go through that gauntlet, because if I didn't get dished out some really evils of humanity, I wouldn't learn. I wouldn't learn to rise above it. I wouldn't learn to stop seeing myself as a victim. I wouldn't, come back to love and compassion for all. So it was a very vital lesson for me. And what actually happened was, yes, there was quite a lot of violence in the family. And that was a big part of it. I don't need to go into that more. And the gender disparity and that stuff was a big part of my life. And I never really felt like, being told like I was a girl was just not right for me. And so hence a big reason, the two main reasons why I had to leave.
And were you feeling that disparity within you when you were growing up?
The disparity wasn't about me. It's funny because every time I'm interviewed about when is the first time you knew that you were trans, I'd be like, I never ever bought that story. I just am. And then people say I'm trans. I'm like, oh, okay. But I'll say I am queer and or trans by default, because that's the meaning humans have associated with this kind of person. But I am just Tien. Gender is just an expression. It's not who I am at all. And I think about so much of the world and humans who have no idea who you are, because you keep thinking you're a man or you're a woman, or even if you're trans, you're just still stuck in an identity. An identity is ego-bound. It's not source-bound. It's not from spirit. It's not from the heavens. It's like this righteous ego-bound that says, I have to be a certain way. And it limits us. And it keeps us stuck in a righteous view of who we are. So, trans, whatever, it's fine. People want to call me trans, it's okay. There's an identifying word that's now common enough in cultural conversation now in North America. So it's good. People can place me wherever. But still, it doesn't allow people to see beyond. Yeah? And that's the next level of gender awareness that we're moving into, which is why I'm here to really bust that.
Yes. Yeah. By destroying those...
Destroying it. No more.
Yes.
And the whole point is, no, you're no longer... I think a lot of people are afraid of that because their identity is so stuck in their gender. But what I'm saying is that it's okay, but you need to know that you were brainwashed into it. And then the moment you're free of that, and you can find areas about it that you found a lot of comfort and you found a lot of joy in being a woman, because you were told you're a woman, or being a man... And if you like certain aspects, great, now you have choice. Now, it's kind of like orange juice, right? Let's say you were brought up with orange juice your whole life, and you said, this is the only juice you're allowed to drink. And then suddenly you went, oh, there's so many kinds of juices out there. Right? And they're like, oh my God, it's not true. I'm not orange juice. It's not the only juice to drink. And then you're like, oh, but there's so many kinds. Oh, okay. And then you went, but you know what? I actually really like orange juice. Now you have freedom.
Because you've made the choice.
Yes. Now you choose. Oh, I really like being a man. It's just an expression. It's not who you are. It's just an expression.
And what was the motivation for you to change that expression and transition?
Because I am the first Asian trans man to come out in Vancouver, 2002. I didn't transition because there was anything wrong with me. I just knew that as long as... Now, the word NB and queer and even the alphabet soup descriptor of the 2S LGBTQAI+, that's the latest acronym. I think we went into that acronym like 2 months ago. Hence the queer community is always joking about the alphabet soup. None of those words were available at that point. Yeah, in 2000 and early 2000s, we were still the L and G, the lesbian and gay. And I lovingly and jokingly always say that once in a while, when the community felt really compassionate and loving, we would throw the Bs in, which was the bisexuals. And then trans was absolutely not part of the palette. Trans was absolutely allowed if you were a drag queen, and some of the drag kings at that point were starting to come out, but it was still not embraced as part of the community. So if you were dragging your gender, it was great, no problem. But if you were actually wanting to live as a different gender expression, that was not embraced at that point. So when I did come out at that point, it was horrible. And I did so because I knew as long as I was continued to be read as a woman, I knew I just could not be much more. And I knew I was way more. And I tried a whole bunch of different kind of woman expression, right? From like, you know, the girly girl to the tomboy to the butch dyke to the, you know, to the straight demure girl and all of those expressions of woman that you could come up with. And I tried them all. And I was like, no, I'm still not able to be me. Because as long as they keep thinking I'm a woman, I have no, you know. So and being a lot more, having a part of me that was also naturally man expressed with more preferences for masculine forms and dress, and I was androgynous. I was quite androgynous anyway, so I know my testosterone levels were probably a little bit higher regularly than a so-called standard cis female. It just was natural for me. You know, I was always a boy when I was a kid, you know, things like that. So it was natural for me to just transition. And so once again, I transitioned because there were no other options. Now, don't bother. Just be free. That's great. You don't need to. Just be whoever you are. It's all good. Times have changed.
And at the time, how was you coming out publicly as the first Asian trans man? How was that received amongst the lesbian and gay community?
It was, you know, I want to acknowledge that the lesbian and gay community, the present queer community, I love the community tremendously. I have so much, like, I tear up when I think about the amazing strides the community has made and the evolution and just the tenacity and resilience. And at the same time, at that point, it was very challenging. And then, of course, being of color, it was a whole different reality for me. I had a few white trans guy friends, so on a personal level, transitioning was challenging when I was going to compare myself, right, to whether a cisgendered man and or to my white guy friends. There was absolutely no models for me. I was absolutely alone. Nobody. And it was horrible because nobody got the reality of being a racialized trans person, and people would assume, you know, that if you were trans, if they had heard of it, their model for what trans was based on a white guy. So there was all of that, and it wasn't as racially diverse in the early 2000s in Vancouver, because a lot of the Koreans came in around Olympics 2010. And the Taiwanese started coming around mid-2000s. So the history of Asian immigration was very different. We weren't at this point where there was a majority Asian population at that point. So the isolation of being Asian to begin with was already present. And then being not having family support because, you know, all of that stuff. And then being the first Asian trans guy was awful, was god-awful. And I can now laugh about it because I have done a lot of my own healing, but it was extremely isolating. And people in my Asian lesbian community didn't know what to do with me. And so not that any of them were mean to me. They never were. They never mistreated me and were never awful to me, but because it was unknown for them. And I'd say it was unknown for them because a lot of them probably had to manage their own gender issues the moment I started. When they knew I was coming up, it reflected on themselves. And if people were not ready to look at that, you know, they were scared. Because now, 20 years later, like, over half of them are all they, thems now, right? I'm like, yeah, well, you know, but 23 years ago when I came out, nobody was ready to look at that for themselves. So I think that their own internalized gender issues, not ready to be addressed, might have been a reason why I was not supported. And so, I was isolated from that community, which was really my family for like 10 years in this country. The Asian lesbians were my people, and suddenly they were gone. So added to that, there was that extreme isolation. And then the transitional changes and, just having to go through the psychiatrists and all of that, and people making assumptions about me being, they'll look at me. And I remember one of my most favorite moments was, now I love to share, is that when I was at the psychiatrist, this was 2002, where at that point you had to get medical diagnosis in order to go through any kind of transitional, phases.
Procedure, yeah.
Whether it be surgeries and or hormones, you had to get a medical diagnosis which said that yes, there was something wrong with you.
Oh, wow.
And you had what they called gender dysphoria, which is a psychiatric problem.
Yes.
Right? So I knew I was just playing the game. I was like, fine, whatever. I know there's nothing wrong with me, but I just want to get this done, so let's go do that. So the white psychiatrist looked at me and he said, so, okay, we have to do our interview, right? So he said, so are you ready to, transition? Are you sure? You ready to become a man? You ready? You ready to get hairy? You ready to get big? Are you ready to get stinky? And it was just such a ridiculous question. And I looked at him and I said, dude, I'm becoming a guy. I'm not becoming a white guy. So it's ridiculous, right? And now in 2023, it is ridiculous that they would ask that, but that was the climate at that point. Yeah, and that was just a really clear indication of all the guys all the people who went in for their psychiatric diagnosis of gender dysphoria were white. And I was the first colored one, maybe the first BIPOC one. But, I knew that there were 2 other First Nations guys and 1 black guy. And then there was me.
But even that question feels just rooted in the identity and stereotype of the male gender as well, which was not even your intention doing it. So...
Well, I didn't know, the transition journey is a one of leap of faith. You have no idea. You have no idea what these hormones at a higher level than your body is accustomed to is going to do to your features, is going to do to your, everything. Your physiological state is going to change. So you don't know.
Yeah.
And so you just jump.
Yeah.
And you go, well, life up till now, so whatever. That's just been a motto for me anyways. If you're done, great, what's next? And you jump. It's got to be better.
And you took the leap.
Yes, I have.
And then how did that feel for you physiologically after going through this process? Well,
the process took quite a few years because I chose to do it gently on my body because I knew I wasn't a young 20-something-year-old. I was 33 at that point. And so I was practical about it. So I knew I wasn't going to start, making my bones and muscular, that's exactly what's going on. Your bones are actually going to change. And when you're going through your puberty growth spurts at age 11, you're a lot more supple. Right?
Yes.
So everybody goes through that growing pains, what they call growing pains, because your body is literally changing. Your muscles are suddenly growing, all of that. So at 33, it was very painful. And so there was a lot of discomfort in that. And the transition was fine. The transition itself in my body was fine because I have a very holistic take on my wellness. I'm not brainwashed in pharmaceutical medicine. And I've always been a plant-based, not always. I have grown in my plant-based knowledge and medicine. So, I was very well supported nutritionally and spiritually as well and mentally. So that was all good. The hardship was all about, how I was being treated by other people.
And how did that treatment impact you following you coming out?
There was the isolation from the old communities, absolutely, and then entering a whole new world was very challenging. I was constantly, because I never really fully passed as a man, I had so much internalized hatred, and I never really had any hatred for myself until I started, seeing how much people didn't know what to do with me, and was so uncomfortable, and I experienced never being seen, like not being seen on so many levels, because there weren't NBs the way there are lots of NBs nowadays. The expression of human is so different now that people can just be whatever and your gender is not unknown, but because it's so common, it's no big deal. People are now used to it here in North America, but back then it wasn't the case. So I was never seen, and I wasn't treated well. I was mocked a lot publicly. I was humiliated many times. I didn't have access, realistically speaking, I didn't have an ID for 5 years because they didn't know what to do with me, and things like that, right? So that just created so much upset for myself, and I internalized it, and I hated it, and I tried really hard to pass as a cis guy and a businessman and all of that, and I failed tremendously. And so the result at the end was, after 6, 7, 8 years of trying really hard and having so many doors closed, and so much hatred and humiliation and family disownment, I did eventually in 2009 just fell into a massive depression. Like, that was the state I was in, and also coupled with that, I was in huge financial debt at that point because I had spent so much energy trying to be a normal cisgendered man, businessman, and it just didn't work. It never worked. So I lost a lot of money in those ventures. Yeah.
And then in your story that I was able to read online, it did mention that you did have a suicide attempt. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So in 2009, which I will always now refer to as my Phoenix Rising, it was the biggest spiritual awakening for me, extremely necessary. If I was to look at it from my soul journey, it was crucial. It was crucial for me to be so beaten down and to experience such hatred and rejection from humanity, and what I simply called humans being unkind to human being because they're not connected to their souls and their source. After experiencing 6 years of that straight up, I attempted suicide one night, and I remember it. It was like an April 13th. It was a Monday night in the spring, and we don't need to go into any of the details, but that was what happened. And the next morning, when I woke up, I was extremely disappointed that I was still here. And in that moment of just chemical imbalances, I would say, because of such extreme grief and rot, plus the exhaustion and just the state of being at that moment, I was exhausted, and my soul said to me, Tien, you're still alive, so what do you want to do now? And I just cried out in despair. I was in my bed and I just cried. I said, you know what? I don't care anymore. I just don't care. I said, I don't care. I don't care if they treat me well. I don't care if they hate me. I don't care if I never ever pass as a man. I don't care if they embarrass me and beat me up. I don't care if I'm poor because I was, minus whatever, a couple $100,000 at that point. I don't care. I said, I just, honestly, I just want to be happy. I don't care about being some famous designer or successful artist. I don't care. Just want to be happy. And so my soul said, okay, Tien, look, promise me one thing. If you're going to stick around on planet Earth, just make sure you have a really good time. Otherwise, I give you my blessings right now. You can go home to your maker if you want. And something just completely popped for me. The option of being happy suddenly was right there, handed to me. And I was like, okay, whatever. Just stop doing anything that I'm not happy with. Just stop it and just do things that make me happy. And in that moment, seriously, I chose the mantra that I now continue to live by, however many years later, 15 years later, right? Which is to choose to live for joy. And regardless of whatever is going on, it's about joy. And it's not about pretense joy. It's not that fake positive thinking thing. No, it's about intentionally being here because you want to be happy. I'm here to have a joyful experience. And even in the face of hatred, even in the face of racism, of transphobia, of wars even, and this is the climate we're living in. We're in a massive collapse of old systems on planet Earth. Hence there's so much disruption and violence and war, and that is a spiritual awakening for our planet. So even in the midst of all of that, we can actually choose to be happy. Because you will know anywhere in the world there will always be stories of like that wise person in that war-torn village was happy, even if bombs were falling around, because they were with people they loved. They were present. They took joy in that little meal that they had. Things like that, right? This is not a new philosophy at all. But how we access that is really my choice and your choice. Because most people are still stuck in that cynicism. And then I'll have people who are friends who will say, yeah, whatever, that Tien, he's just so pretend and so happy. I'll be like, no, I can be a really evil, angry person. Because guess what? I'm a human being. But I know I can access joy. The moment I say, okay, are we done? Are we done being a grumpy old fart? Really? Are we done? Okay, fine. Stop it. Now let's do something that makes me happy. Because absolutely, if you're going to be angry, be angry. There's a reason why. Maybe you stubbed your toe. Maybe someone broke into your car. Maybe someone yelled some hateful things at you. Yeah, be angry. But don't let that be who you are. Because you're the only one who suffers. And not just that. You're the one who suffers. I've been there. Right? I used to hate people for hating me. And we continue to keep the cycle of hate alive. I don't care how justified you are. But you are the one. I was the one suffering. When I hated them, I suffered. So you get to choose. And there's no truth to any of it. Do it, whatever. Who cares? But the point of it is, if you want to have a really great life and actually make a difference, being that whiny, angry victim person will only debilitate you, and you will suffer, and your impact will be so much less on the planet. So for me, if I was a raving, angry victim person, sure, there's a lot of raving, angry victim people out there. And they'll hear you, but they won't hear you more than that. And for me to have done the work to hear, now I can actually share wisdom. I can actually share access to transforming being an angry victim into actually joy, power, and light, where I can now spread more, right? It's not festering in me, and I'm not just being this garbage holder of like angry victim stuff. There's much more impact I can have when I'm a happy person, and a true happy person, not a fake happy person.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It does, the question that your soul asked you, do you choose to be here? The choice that we all have, the choice to make these decisions of how we live or how we choose to be. And so how has choice and that awareness, how have you implemented that from that moment forward?
It was so fantastic. When I knew that life is a choice, whatever I choose to do is entirely up to me. Nelson Mandela said, right, when he was jailed, he said, look, you can jail my body, you can imprison my body, but you can never imprison my mind. And that is a huge lesson, because we know now in this time period that what I'm thinking about myself and others is what actually creates the world around me. And 20 years ago, this was flaky woo-woo stuff, but now it's clearly reality. Okay? because we're moving so fast that we're now attracting exactly that thing that you are being. So if we are stuck in victim-minded consciousness, now I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, and I'm saying it's a foundational, it's truth. We respond to being oppressed or being hated on by internalizing. That's what a lot of us will do. But at some point, you have to choose to stay there or not, because you can keep on being a victim or not. And it's true. Sure, maybe life is hard. Sure, yes, someone did treat you. Sure, racism is real. Transphobia is real. Yes, gender-based violence is real. But you can either stay as a victim or you can go somewhere else and be somebody else about it. So when you choose, that's when something will alter. And of course, it's not like that.
Yes.
It takes practice because we're ingrained to think in certain ways as human beings. We're not taught and trained to think in a light way. We're taught to think in hardship and scarcity. So we have to go forth and spread that wisdom so people don't have to suffer so much. That's all.
And we have to go through that experience of suffering or internalizing.
Yeah, we will go through
to reach that point,
Yeah.
to make that choice.
Exactly.
And what other values that do you choose to share with people?
So many things to learn and so many things to say. I could talk a lot.
That's why we have you here today.
I think, so if we were to look at how we can access more of a soulful living, and for lack of a better word, right? People might say spirituality, whatever, it's all flaky stuff. I don't care about the language being used. And I like to teach about being joyful from that place of joy without making it like some long-winded, spiritual conversation. There is nothing we need to study or learn or try to be better. We are inherently, it's our birthright to be happy. All of us were born happy babies. We just were, yeah? And we were curious. This part of our thing. And in order to access that joy and curiosity that was part of us, that has always been part of us, we have to, number one, be very clear that we have that within us. We have to be aware that we can access that at any moment. Okay? And that's a very basic lesson for any of us to get. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to go to the monastery and worship this. You don't have to go do yoga for like however many hours. You don't have to go and sit in quiet for 40 days. You don't have to do any of that. You can simply alter your state of being right now by shifting your focus onto something that actually inspires and makes you happy at that moment. So if you are constantly in a cycle of hardship and depression and cynicism and victim consciousness, you want to be able to look and be really honest with yourself that that's what you keep doing. And it's not that it's not your fault really, but you do choose to keep doing it because you don't know better. But the moment you go, oh, I keep doing it, and then you're willing to make that change, that's when you get to choose. And people will tell me, you make it so easy. It's so hard. It's so hard to be happy, or it's so hard to, whatever, to think better or whatever. I'll be like, well, consider that it's not that it's hard. It's that because you are actually not that committed to being happy. You're more interested in being upset. And it's a hard one to hear, but it is true. Because if I was more interested in being happy, I would just stop doing that thing, stop hanging out with those people. I would stop, thinking about that thing so much and go for a walk. That easy. Or go play with that funny animal over there. That easy. Because I am much more interested in being happy. Now, if there's actually things to address, fine, we have to address it. Right? But those are simple, daily, practical tools that people can start to do.
And what role does your support network play in fostering that?
Absolutely. We want to be around people who are really aligned to this commitment. And as we grow and transform, we will notice our community will change. I have I let go of people a lot.
And what do you love about your community that surrounds you now?
My community that surrounds me now is interested in having fun. And that's what it is. We're joyful, funny, and we laugh a lot. And we're real, we're straight, we're clean, so we're not, induced or impacted by any other things. This is me, my source. I'm happy because I'm happy, not because some drug made me happy. That's inauthentic. We can access that happy now inside me, so there's nothing out there. So it's a very clear space to be in. And when we're in that clear space, your mind and your body is clear, you can access higher consciousness at any moment because there's nothing in the way. It's a physiological thing, right? That our brain is here, our heart is here, our brain's here, and then heaven consciousness is up here. So the thing that's in the way of us being connected to source is our brain. And if the brain is not clear, you can't access as much. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So we are in Tien's space here at the Beaumont Studios, the B1 building, and we are learning about Tien's life journey. But also, we're really lucky because Tien has agreed to show us a little bit of what you do in this creative space. So, would you like to give us a little bit of a demonstration?
For sure.
And also, what do people come to you for when they want to visit the wizard, Tien the Wizard?
So, just to be clear for the audience, I do a lot of different things. I wear a lot of different hats. I call them aspects of Tien.
Yes.
I am known as Tien the Wizard when I am being an alchemist, when I'm being a spiritual teacher, being a jeweler. I make spells and or doing readings and spiritual guidance. I am Tien the Wizard. And then there's other aspects of me as a spiritual teacher. I am a gender guide. I do presentations and workshops. I speak about transforming gender, transcending gender. So in my studio, I am here in my goldsmith hat. So I make jewelry, and I've been a goldsmith and silversmith for 26 years. I do tons of custom work, from regular ready-to-wear collections in solid sterling, to tons of one-of-a-kinds, wedding rings, heirloom resetting, specialty gemstones, and symbols like beautiful icons and magical amulets is actually one of my passions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a ring band for you. This is actually the project where I'm building this ring for a client, and it's a very simple gemstone ring with a carnelian, and it's going to be a carnelian set in a bezel setting like this. And then that bezel setting will be nice and cut, it'll be round, and then it'll be soldered onto this, which is the actual ring band. So because we're not going to go through the whole process right now today, I will simply build this band, and maybe we'll solder the bezel cup, which is this piece of silver, onto the base. And that's what I think we should be able to show you today. Yeah?
Yes, thank you.
Because it's always awesome to have fire.
Yes.
Fire transforms. Yes, in the alchemical world, it burns the past. All of that good stuff. So I'm just going to stamp it so you get my little... I'll actually show you my little stamp.
Nice.
Yes. I got this made like finally a year ago. Excellent. I'll show it to you shortly. And then this is just my 9-to-5 stamp, so people know it's a solid sterling piece. And that's what we have.
Wow.
So we got Tien the Wizard. Awesome. So the band has already been annealed. Annealing means when we apply heat to the metal and it softens it. So every metal will have different ways to anneal it, and then that way you can bend it more readily. And solid sterling silver will be annealed by applying the flame to the surface until it looks like it's ready to melt. It turns red hot, and it actually turned red, and then you quench it in cold water right away. That will anneal your metal, and then it will slowly go back in its molecular state to a hardened metal. But right now it's still in a very workable state, so as you can see, I was able to bend this piece really quite readily. But because I've now, after 26 years of doing this, I've built about 20,000 rings.
Wow.
From really skinny little things to more, to bigger gem setting pieces like that. But I'll make really skinny little rings like this as well, so that I can make quite a few in a day.
And while you're putting this together, how did you come across the Beaumont Studios?
Just by accident, like most great things in life, right?
Yes.
I had just bought a loft up the street at the right on 8th and Canby, and and I was just checking out the neighborhood, and I drove by the Beaumont, and there was Jude sitting outside on the steps, and Jude is the founder of the Beaumont Studios. And this was 2003. And I saw that there was a sign for a Christmas fair. So I went and said hi. And, Jude being the always social butterfly Jude, who is so proud of her studio and of her work, was happy to bring me around. And anybody, too, if you actually see Jude, she's always happy to show off the Beaumont to you, because it's a really amazing space that it's evolved into, right?
Yeah.
So I saw Jude, and she showed me around, and we came upstairs, and she says, oh, and this little room here, it's really like 30 square feet. She says, oh, this is so small, we can't sell it, it's just a cat box. And literally it was where the cat did its business. And she had some canvases lined up in here, and that was it. And it was so funny, because I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And then we made arrangements when we part of the show and all that. But I went back home that night, and this is even way before my spiritual awakening. I was already very connected. But that night, I just started visualizing, and I'm a small space designer. I've had an interior design business for 12 years before. And so my brain just started going, and I couldn't sleep all night. And I was up sketching. And then in this 30 square foot, I was like building in my brain this whole studio. And I was like, but I have a studio in, William Street Studio over on the east side, whatever. And the cost of this is going to be 3 times more. And then I just listened, right? So my spirit said, no, you're obviously excited, just do it. And I literally called Jude the next day and said, I can't stop thinking about that little space. She says, you're serious? I said, yeah, I can do something with it. And this is what I've done with it.
Wow.
So that's how I ended up here.
And how long have you been in this space now?
Since 2003.
Wow.
So 20 years.
Congrats on 20 years.
I know, right?
Wow.
I think the Beaumont hasn't, I think right now the Beaumont itself is like in the 19th year.
Yes.
Because in the 2003 that I came in, 2003 that I came in, we hadn't officially, we were just renting out spaces at that point, but hadn't like really solidified its brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Next
next
year will be the big exciting time.
Right. So what are you doing now?
So now I'm going to solder this ring. So soldering simply means melting your solder into a joint, which will allow 2 joints to seal up.
Okay.
In layperson's terms. But what's actually going on is with the heat, you alter the molecular structure of your metal. I talk like this because my work is all alchemy, right?
Yes.
So you're altering the molecular structure of the metal, and in the alchemical sciences and or magic, you are changing its inherent being. So you're returning it to a nothing state, which then allows other things to be incorporated into it.
Now that's very interesting. Would you say that same process happened to you in your spiritual awakening?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why we call it the Phoenix Rising, right? Where you die to your past. The Phoenix in itself, that story of the Phoenix Rising, is when you let go of your past and something new happens. And so when you die to your past, you have to be willing to die to all of it, and then something new can be created, or your new self can be reborn. Come on. There you go. Did you see that?
We caught it, yes.
Yeah.
What was it?
That was it. The solder slid in between the two joints and soldered it shut. And that's molecularly, and scientifically, it's called capillary action. Capillary action is when you have a channel that's narrow enough that whatever liquid enters it will be able to move up. So it will kind of defy the laws of gravity because of that action that forces it through. So that's actually capillary action that has the soldering joint. The solder move into the soldering joint. Okay, great. So what I've done is I put it in the pot of, I'm a very green studio, so I've been very eco-conscious way before Vancouver started recycling. I would be seen riding my bicycle to the recycling depot with, it'd be so goofy, with my garbage bag of mixed paper, and I'd ride into the depot and there's like mountains of paper, and I'd go, am I really making a difference? Because that's just so much, and be like, yes I am. And then true enough, I've been doing that for almost 30 years now. So I'm a very green person, and I've been making all sorts of my own, cleaning products and body cleaning products. I just clean my whole body with 1 bar of soap that I make, and that's it. So my chemicals in this studio are made by me.
Wow.
So I will use, traditionally prior to the chemicalization of modern day society in the 1940s, 50s, we would use vinegar and citric acid. And the whole point of it was to create an acid environment that would then eat away at the oxides that get built up in the firing process. And then we started chemicalizing it, and so now they sell all sorts of toxins for that. But I don't. I just use vinegar and citric acid.
And that's what you
it.
just used?
That's
there?
what I put it in that pot.
Yeah.
So that it can clean out all the oxides from the firing.
Yeah.
This that I've applied on here is boric acid and water.
And what does that do?
It's called flux. So when people can buy flux in its chemical state, and its poisonous chemical state in the shops, but flux will eat up and clean up the surface and will allow the solder to nicely adhere to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is an acidic compound again. So now what I'm doing is soldering. This one usually takes a 2-step process because there's usually gaps in between, but we'll solder whatever we can. Gonna solder this bezel, which is the round thing, onto the base. And if you can get close enough, that's when you can see, you can see the solder melt, and then it will go into the joints. This part is a little bit, let's take a little bit of time to lay the little bits around, so if you don't feel like you want to watch that, we don't have to, but.
Oh, the whole process is really interesting. It's not
Is it?
often that we get to see every step and have you describe what you're doing, so
That's great.
we do appreciate this a lot.
It's so funny because it's very ordinary for me. It's magical because, I know how to approach every situation with newfound joy and curiosity. But for me, it's, kind of like we say in spiritual terms, it's your eat rice, sweep floor. It's ordinary.
Yes,
And eat rice, sweep floor is crucial for every human being. And in the non-Asian terms, they call it chop wood, carry water. And there'll be phases in our life where we want to really honor the process of eat rice, sweep floor, chop wood, carry water, which means do the same thing. It's okay. Just do what you know to do. And let let the universe look after that desire of yours. Stop chasing it. Stop chasing a dream. Stop forcing things to happen.
Yeah, it's those fundamental practices.
Absolutely. So for me, doing soldering joints like this is like eat rice, sweep floor. And I forget it's a very unusual thing for most human beings who don't solder on a daily basis.
And you mentioned earlier about when you came across this space, how you felt like, excited.
Yeah.
How does like excitement and playfulness factor into you living a life of being joyful?
Excitement, I think human beings have forgotten to listen to ourselves. Let me say that again. Human beings have forgotten to listen to our hearts and ourselves. So if we were to live so true to our heart's purpose, our soul purpose, you want to check in and listen. Every time you're excited about something, it means your soul is calling you. You have to listen to it. And then what happens is that instead of listening to your heart that says, oh, I want to do that. Why? Because it's so fun. I want to do that. You then go and listen to your brain, which is saying stupid things like, oh, no, you can't. Oh, you're too stupid. Oh, you're too young. Or you're too old. Or what will mom think? Or what will my partner think? Or what will my friend think? Oh, I don't have enough money. All those things that your brain just suddenly interrupted that desire. And if we can really, so learning heart consciousness is to just listen to this. Don't listen to that brain. It's not true. It's not true. Where is it? It's not true. It's just your thoughts saying silly things. So you can either choose to listen to your brain or choose to listen to your heart. So the basic lesson around that, I tell everybody, listen to your heart. Why? When it feels good, it's your heart speaking. If it doesn't feel good, if it leaves you in doubt, fear, concern, all of those feelings that are not so yummy, don't listen to it. Don't listen to it. And then just follow that thing that your heart wants to do. And it could be really ridiculous. It could be really little. Then you have regular constraints like, oh, well, I really, really want to go to Alaska, but no, I don't have that money. Okay, fine. But at least start on that path. Fine, I really want to be, I want to really, whatever silly dreams that people have, right? I want to go and scuba dive in, the Cayman Islands. Well, how am I going to get there? That's fine. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy that feeling for a while and stop killing off your dream right away. And just start practicing doing that. And then be realistic. Absolutely, right? So when you listen, when your heart is excited about something, listen. Because, this was definitely not a smart move in terms of my brain to come here, but but it was a smart move in the long term.
Absolutely. Look, we're still here. You're
I know.
still
Look
here.
at us now.
Yeah.
Right? Business has been great because I'm here, and not just business. It's not just about money and business. It's about the wealth of your life experience. All right. Now we're gonna heat the surfaces up and get the solderers. So as you'll see, some of the little solder squares might just kind of run away and not fall into the actual joint. There you go, you saw that?
Ooh, yeah.
Silversmithing is actually a very spiritual act. It's a very alchemical thing. And it is one of my biggest Zen teachers. Because I learned really quickly in the beginning, if I'm not one with the metal, these soldering joints will not take. And I'll have new beginner students who will come up and ask me, why is it that joint isn't taking? And I'll say to them, well, how did you feel? How did you feel while you were making that soldering joint? Oh, nervous, angry, upset. I said, that's why it didn't take. So my lesson years ago, I remember I was sitting there at my polisher. And I was like, oh, right, if I'm not happy, stop it. Because it's not going to take. Go back, do something else, get yourself realigned to being happy, and then come back, and boom, it will take. It's simple. That's your basic lesson in life, right? If you're not liking doing that thing, don't force it. Take a break, do something else, get yourself aligned, and then come back when you're excited about it again, and then do it then.
And what are the things that you do to realign?
Oh God, all sorts of things. Honestly, I'm very easy. I'm very easy to amuse. Netflix is a really easy way. I just turn on a comedy and I'm happy. It's a great thing about being a neuroatypical thinker and being dyslexic is that I actually don't retain a lot of information. And so I can watch the same movie and I'll laugh at that same joke, even if I've heard it like 1,000 times. I'll still laugh at it.
Yeah.
It's great because it's so funny. Because I read every situation as though it's brand new. And that's what keeps us simple and playful, right? But yeah, there's a lot of things I do that keep me happy. And, you know, I just live a point now in my life where if I'm doing something, it's because I want to do it. Because it makes me happy to do it. You will hardly ever see me doing anything that I'm not happy about doing. And for some people, that's ridiculously unrealistic. But the training is to get to a place where even things you don't like to do, we have to get to a place of neutralizing that dislike. So we've got to level up and bring our state, create a whole new context, whatever story you're going to make up about it, make it up so that you can be there and find peace. The whole point is not to be happy all the time. We don't have that fire chi to be happy all the time. It's ridiculous. But so for example, if I'm chopping onions, I'm not happy about chopping onions. I don't love chopping onions, right?
We're crying.
Yeah, you're crying. But we don't have to be upset about chopping onions. You can simply be neutral about it. So you just go, oh, yeah, chopping onions. I don't need to have an opinion about it. I don't need to be unhappy about it. And most people, because we're so trained to be unhappy about things, you just keep being unhappy and then you go and share about it and you post about it and you complain about it and you tell everybody about it. And then you have like thousands of people agreeing with you why you should be unhappy about it. And guess what? It gave you more and more reason to be unhappy about that stupid thing. When really, just stop talking about it and find neutrality, which is, it's okay. I'm doing this thing now. I may not like it, but it's okay.
And it's part of the bigger vision.
You got it.
You're cooking a meal. You need that foundation.
Yeah. Or it doesn't matter. It could be a job.
Yeah.
It could be that crying baby that you really love, but sometimes it's just, right? Parents all know that.
Yeah.
But you go, it's okay. You look at the bigger picture. You create a new context. You'd be like, oh, I'm learning patience. Or, you know, whatever you want to make up in your brain, doesn't matter. It's your brain. Free brain thoughts, all you want is all yours. Think all you want. If you can think about it in a new way that's going to bring you more peace, go for it. You just make you a happier person. And life gets easier. And as you listen to yourself, you stop saying yes to things you don't like. And you say yes to things you like. Like I'm here with you both because it was fun.
Yeah.
Not because, oh, it's going to generate money. Or, oh, no, because I have to in order to, because I want to. No. Because when someone says, do you want to? I'll just listen. Yeah, let's do it. Simple. And I will know right away if it's not aligned. I'll be like, nah.
You'll feel it.
Yeah, and I'll be like, yeah, no. You want to go out for dinner? Nah.
So,
very easy.
Now, you soldered that. Was that the bezel you said?
Yeah, so this is the bezel that got the bezel is the circle thing.
Yeah.
The circle that holds the stone. Yeah, so now it's, I believe there's still a joint there. Yeah, there's still a hole.
Yeah.
You know, in here. So I will need to pickle and resolder this again.
Okay.
So that will be done after it's cleaned up, after we're done here.
Yeah.
But, so I'm putting that in my little vinegar mix to clean up. But this ring did get soldered. You see that?
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is hammer it out for you. So now you understand how a ring is actually made.
Okay.
So
is this the final process?
no.
Oh,
This is just the beginning.
This is we're just in the beginning.
Then you got to set
forming.
the stone, cut it, set the stone, file it, finish, grind it, polish it, blah, blah, blah. So now we're simply just going to hammer the ring so that it becomes round. And I believe it's a round band that my client asked for, not a square band. So excuse me. Let me check. Yep. Round band. Once in a while, it will split. I don't know if it will, but we'll see. So this metal rod is a cold steel. It's a steel rod, and it's what we call a mandrel. And then we hammer the ring onto it, and it will take the shape. Now prior to this soldering state, remember when it was a strip of metal, a rectangular metal, it's already been measured out so that it fits the ring size that my client has asked for.
Yeah.
And the end of it, ring sizes is math. Making a ring is math. It's 2 pi r. That's all it is. So whatever size it is based on your ring measurement, which is the circumference of every finger. So that's already been cut to the right size. And so now it's round.
Wow.
And then I will size it on
Ooh,
here.
and that's the measuring?
That's my ring. This is my sizing mandrel. And this is the right size that I sized at. So we're good. I did my math. I didn't hammer it too much.
And you kept twisting it as you were measuring.
Yeah, well,
too.
yeah, I have to do that on this and on that. So now I have my ring band, and I'll probably clean it up a little bit more in here. And then once this one is done, so I'll quickly just fast forward the steps for you to see. When this is soldered and clean, I will then cut this into a ring, into a circle, so that it's now a circular frame, what I call the cameo. I'll grind it down and make it nice and round. Then I'll grind this down flatter and pop this on here. And then this thing gets soldered onto here.
Yeah.
And then once it's all soldered and everything, and all the firing work is done, so you do all the flame work, and then you finally set the stone.
Okay.
Because when we're firing, you're about 1,000 degrees. Everything, unless a diamond, will explode. So you do all the firework, and then we're done. And then once that's a nice round clean, we'll pop that in. I've done all the measurements already, and this was a carnelian, so it's a nice hard agate. Don't worry about dropping that. So it's now gonna fit. I will push the edges down with my tool.
Yeah.
And after that, given it's all ugly and bumpy, after the stone is set, then I will file all this bumpiness and all the solder, all of that down. Everything gets filed, finished, sanded, and then polished. So we're not even halfway through yet, but at least we've done this, and we just have one more soldering joint to go, and then the stone setting happens.
Well, thank you for showing us the initial processes of your alchemy and wizardry. So one thing that if you go to Tien's website, which is Tien Neo Eamas.
No, so I have two websites. I have tienthewizard.com.
TienTheWizard.com.
That is where I am an alchemist, wizard, my jewelry, my spells, my magical soaps, my readings, like that whole world of the artist and spiritual person. That's tienthewizard.com. And then my other website is tienyourgenderguide.com, which is my professional kind of more businessy aspect where I train and teach workshops around transcending gender.
And so on your website, tienthewizard.com, it says believe in magic. But magic is spelt Magick. What is the meaning behind the spelling of magic that way?
I'm using Old English spelling. Magic with a K is an old pagan, it's a medieval spelling for magic before we distance ourselves too much from spirituality and magic as a life and art form. In European art and philosophical history, everything was the same up until about the 1400s, where art, philosophy, spirituality, medicine and or wellness, education was all the same modality. And then with a lot more steeping in of Catholicism and Christianity, we now started to separate it all, so that now God was your spirituality, right? And then allopathic medicine now became your medicine base, things like that. But way before, so magic was part of that world where I will honor the land, I will honor the sun, the water, the trees as part of my life force, because we weren't so distant. We are not distant from it. We're still part of the land, but we've been brainwashed into thinking that we're not the same. But 4.5 billion years ago, when the two Terra Novas banged into each other and formed planet Earth, we came from that. So we're the same thing. Yeah, so it takes it makes magic part of life. And magic, as with a K, is more a spiritual practice, being able to transform self from darkness to light, from sadness to joy, from suffering to wonder and all that good stuff. That's the word. And then magic then became, with a C, MAGIC, is about illusion. The act of pulling a rabbit out of a hat, illusionary magic, which is performative magic. It's a very different thing than actual spiritual, transformative magic. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so we know that you've also organized an event in the past, back in 2007.
Oh, yes, right.
And that was Gender Euphoria Day.
Yeah.
And also you have an event coming up.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the upcoming event?
Oh, that's so great. I organized the first ever trans celebration in the world in 2007, and we called it Happy Tranny Day. And then a bunch of people didn't like that. So we're like, okay, fine, I'm not attached to it. So I was like, okay, fine. But I love that word because it's a funny alliteration, right? Usually most words which end with a Y is joyful. But yes, this word, the word tranny, has been used to in a hateful, violent manner for a long time. At that point, 2007, I thought maybe it's time for us to reclaim it the way we've reclaimed homo and queer and other kinds of, words that have been used in a derogatory manner, but maybe not so much yet. So we changed it the next year and we called it Gender Euphoria Day. And so being the first trans celebration in the world at that point, it was really significant. And up till now, so what has happened to that event now, it has over the 20 years now evolved into what is now celebrated as the Trans Day of Visibility. And I believe that I'm actually the founder of that event, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
People will not know that, but it's okay. I'm not that egotistical. So that was the last event I actually organized, and I was sharing with my crew for this event that I'm organizing now called Queer Spirit Fair, happening on November 25th here at the Beaumont Studios. It is a fair to celebrate the magic and spirituality of queer people. So I am demanding a very high frequency and people who are here to really showcase our light and our joy and the wisdom and magic that we can bring forth to the world. And that's the event that I'm bringing. And I was talking to my crew. I was like, oh my God, the last time I hosted an event or organized an event, it was prior to social media. And prior to all of that, it's just so hard now. It's like there's just so much work to do. Back then it was so much easier. Just get a bunch of people to call people and that'll be it. Now they're emailing and be like, can you just call them? I just emailed so-and-so and nobody returned to me. I'd be like, oh my God, if you just called them, it'd be handled by now. You would have the $2,000 that we're asking for. Whatever. Why are you emailing and waiting for people? The social media world and the web world supposed to be easier, but not really. So I'm very excited about it. We have a small group of people right now, and we're still looking for vendors. And I'm very clear about it the way I was very clear about Gender Euphoria Day 15 years ago, where I demanded that we, as a queer community or trans community, for once, for 6 hours a year, just be happy. Like, is it possible to actually organize a group of queer people and not complain about so-and-so misgendering you or how hard your life is because, you know, you're trans or queer. Like, we really have to train ourselves. And it's not just the queer community. We're all humans. We love to complain. But I was very clearly creating a culture of light and joy and celebration. So that was my demand for that event. And I had to, like, really, you know, wrangle people into that. And it was so great because, you know, I'm from Singapore, so we know how to be dictators. So so I could channel my dictator president from years ago and be like, no, you be happy. No more complaining. For 6 hours in your life, can you please just once, just be happy?
Big fine.
Right, exactly. I find you.
Yeah. And coming together
So-
in that community too, to support one another
Totally.
too. Yeah.
Let's just practice being happy. It's such a weak muscle. I'm actually writing my book right now. It's called
Yeah.
Queer Joy.
Nice.
And it is all about that. Like, how do we, as people who have been systemically oppressed and hated on, and we've experienced so much violence, like, how do you find joy? How do you create joy? How do you be the source of joy? You know, that is way more impactful than the grumpy trans person.
And
Oh, my life's so hard.
and you mentioned like it's a weak muscle.
Such a weak muscle.
Framing it though as a muscle that you can work on
Yeah.
and build.
Yeah, we can build, and
Yeah.
we must be so much more committed to being happy. So the event, the Queer Spirit Fair that's happening here will showcase makers and readers. So if you want to have your palm read, or your tarot card reading, or support, you know, some local queer vendors, please come to the event. And I'm very clear that it's juried, so, you know, I'm allowing people to come in who are very clear that they want to, for 8 hours, just shine. Regardless of what's going on. I don't care if somebody misgendered you the night before, or mom had a big fit about you, wanted to be called by a different name, or someone's not hiring you because you're queer or trans or whatever. That's fine. Put that aside. Let's develop and train our muscles so that we can be joyfully, authentically joyful people. And we practice that more. I promise you, life just gets better. It just does.
Well, I'm really happy that you chose to remain on
To stick
planet Earth. Yes, and that you choose to spread light and joy
Yes,
through
thank
your
you.
magical being.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us on the
Yeah.
show today and sharing your story and your creative work and your magic and alchemy.
My pleasure.
We have been joined by Tien Neo Eamas, or Tien the Wizard, today here in his studio at the Beaumont Studios. The Queer Spirit Fair coming up November 20th at the Beaumont Studios.
25th.
at
Saturday.
the Beaumont Studios. Check it out online. Find Tien the Wizard online as well. Much love,
Thank
Tien.
you.
Thank you. You've all been tuned in to Vancity Beats